Welcome, I'm Joan Graci, and we welcome everybody to our Facebook Live session. We do this monthly. Traditionally, it's coming in at about the third Thursday of every month. I am the president and CEO of APA Solutions. We're a full-scale human capital consulting firm that prescribes to a brain-based methodology, which means that we look at the inner workings of this 3-pound command vessel, organ, in a way that can impact individuals, whether they be in the employee population, whether they be in the leadership population, uncovering the mysteries that occur within this command center actually has been shown to prove that individuals who learn more about their brain are actually better leaders, they're more empathetic, they're more understanding. You know, we talk so much about like this whole self-awareness, and this person that I'm nodding with is Eric Neilans, and he's our Ph.D. in the neuroscience space. He is the person who is responsible for taking our data from paper napkins to actual paper, and we thank him for that. And we chose our topic today because I think it's really thought-provoking, really mind-blowing, pun intended, to kind of challenge ourselves with this belief that we exercise or work out our brain on an ongoing basis. And when we put together our format for today, we wanted to give the participants an opportunity to really see if indeed they are working out their brain. Or are they in this autopilot mode? And it was really interesting, Eric. I was watching a TED Talk from a gentleman who was speaking, who's done extensive work with functional MRIs. And he was sharing about how looking at the brains of people that are in autopilot versus getting to that higher circuitry, and how very few people get outside of this low wattage. And I think that's such a cool way, because I love, you know, you're obviously so good in this data tech appropriate university language. And for me, for business, I just think about how many low wattage bulbs we have. And why is it then that we're residing maybe at not getting to the next level, or not moving our business to the next level, or caught in this abyss of this normalcy? And I think that's what we're going to be chatting about today, is the difference between this fixed or this autopilot, and really stretching our abilities through this growth mindset.
Absolutely.
What that means and all of those things. So this is a subconscious thing that we do, not a conscious thing that we do. And I think, again, on an ongoing basis, as leaders, we tend to communicate in a way and lead in a way and discipline in a way that's actually counterintuitive to the natural comfort of the brain. And what our goal is to come together to provide this clarity so leaders can get to insight and say, you know, am I leading people to threat every day? Or am I leading them to reward every day? And I think, again, it kind of starts here. So thoughts, comments on...
Well, I thought today would be a good opportunity for us, with the progression of our last few sessions, to now give our audience and the people who've been watching this likely for the last few months an opportunity to blend all of our talks together. So a number of them have been looking at, as you mentioned, this fixed versus growth mindset, and the fact that the brain itself kind of had these pathways that it kind of likes to go in, and that's the fixed mindset. But there's so much opportunity that if we can expand beyond that and go into more of the growth mindset, we can really overcome a lot of obstacles that we face every day. And then I think in conjunction with last time, we had a discussion then about survey and not to survey. So I thought actually this was a great opportunity to kind of blend a lot of that together here today, and discuss kind of the questions that were asked. This was a presentation actually given by a colleague of mine at ECC, so I borrowed it from her. And I thought it was a good opportunity for everyone that's been paying attention to us, maybe to kind of reflect, where do they stand? Are they more on the fixed mindset side? Are they more on the growth mindset side? Are they somewhere in between? And what does that then tell you about yourself?
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think it's important to emphasize that. I think, again, even in our personal narrative that we've collected over our time in our mental space, when we think about fixed and we think about growth, we think there's this monumental Mount Everest that we have to climb.
Mm-hmm.
And what we know is that actually progress is a better way to measure our development than these whole Mount Everest thought processes that we have.
And that's the whole basis of the growth mindset. I mean, if you really think of it as a practice and you're able to get better, none of us are professional athletes right in one day. No professional athletes that way. So
Right.
obviously it takes years of training and practice to get up to that level. And that's really what I think even here today is going to show, that if you don't score in the range that maybe you hope to be in, that's perfectly fine, because it's once again an opportunity to see where you're at and what growth can you now make, what progress can you make, how can you train yourself and in essence perform at that better level.
And again, Carol Dweck obviously was the Ph.D. who did extensive research primarily in the K through 12 in the educational space.
Yep.
She wanted to evaluate the effectiveness of how we're educating our young adults.
Yep.
She's come to the belief that what we're measuring doesn't necessarily align with success. How we're honoring our students doesn't necessarily set them up for that career positioning.
Right.
And again, so much of this has now transcended into leadership, transcended into the business sector. And I say this every time we're together because I truly mean this. There's always been these fiefdoms of the university sector and college and then, the medical sector and then business. But this collaboration has been, so woefully, put together. And I think you being in this younger space and being more open-minded or growth mindset about how your PhD in neuroscience can be leveraged and truly be able to make a difference. And I think in so many instances, people talk about, wow, that's a large company methodology because Google prescribes to it, and Facebook and Intuit, and great organizations. But it's actually easier in a smaller company because there's less levels of bureaucracy and there's less, you can execute. And it all begins with better understanding how we think and how our mindsets are created. So can you kind of share for our participants, what does a fixed mindset mean?
Yeah, so a fixed mindset's the mentality of if you think that something's going to happen, then it's likely that's the outcome that's going to happen. And once again, talking about this threat versus thriving kind of mentality, there's always a predisposition we have for threat. We're always worried that someone's going to be judging us, or they're not capable enough, or that we're worried about what we're going to look like for those in front, especially in the workspace. Especially if you're new, you don't fit, you're not the stereotypical individual. And that's where now you can see that if you think that you're not going to be able to succeed or you're not able to thrive, then that's exactly what's going to happen. I can't do this, and so as a result, I'm going to give up. Even before this talk, other people say, well, I'm not good in science, I'm not good in math. Well, who's saying that? That's a very fixed mindset, and as a result, you're going to likely see that outcome happen. Whereas growth mindset is looking at our ability like a sport or riding a bike, something that we know that we're not born with, but that we can practice, and through practice we get better with it. Thinking as our mental capacity is just like a muscle. We work out the muscle, it gets stronger, it gets more flexible, we're able to do more with it, we're able to generate more force, and that's what we're now doing with the brain as well.
And again, as kind of an extension of that, what the great news is, and what we're very excited about, is all the bold people who went in ahead of time and actually took the survey.
Yes, yeah.
So I think that's like so rewarding to see people actually, put the computer on and push the buttons and kind of live this so they get a sense of where they fall.
Absolutely.
And as you've had a chance to kind of review the responses, what were you struck with? I mean, is this like the norm? Kind of share what your observations were.
I mean, it was interesting. I think hands down there was an overwhelming response that we got from it. And I was very surprised and pleased to see that. So right away, I think people are interested in the topic. And so I think each and every single one of you that have been paying attention to us, in fact, over the last few months, because I think people are just interested in finding out more about themselves. I think actually what's also interesting from the data that we collected, and of course it's not perfect, and I can go into some of the limitations of the survey, but there actually does seem to be from the mode responses. So looking at each question and looking at what the most number of people responded with, if that seems to be the reflection of the people who took this, then it would suggest that most of the audience are in fact in this growth mindset with a few fixed ideas, which I think is a little bit different than the norm. So I think we're now seeing that either people have been resonating with our conversations, taken that leap to try to now look at something new in a more growth mindset perspective. Because I think what you see is that when most people tend to take this survey for the first time, they tend to be more on the fixed mindset side. Mm-hmm. And so it's great that the people who participate in this actually kind of, again, we'll go through scoring in a second, seem to err more on the side of the growth mindset. So I think that's great, and I think that people maybe are interested in learning further about that.
And to your point, it could definitely align to the fact that our audience tends to be more growth mindset by even visiting with us once a month.
I agree.
Interacting with, our blogs and our Twitter and LinkedIn and all of those type of things. So, clearly, is it more the innovators who even came into the space and really did this? Or did it cause some of the people who wouldn't normally interact with us in person to kind of work behind that veil and say, well, you know what, let me learn more behind it until I'm more comfortable. Right. I think, again, just knowing that the origin of the brain has 3 times more real estate dedicated to threat than it does reward tends to make more sense to people. And that's why the ability to challenge this fixed mindset is so important through this self-talk, because so much of what keeps us into this place and space is not your boss, is not the owner of the company. It's not who you think it is. It's traditionally yourself.
Right. And I think that what's so great about this survey too, and the results that come from this, is that it's now a new reflection on you, and also then how it branches out into every day of your life, not just at work, but also in your personal life, and how is it that you tackle some of these different problems. That's why, as you'll see, we're going to post the link on underneath the Facebook Live, actually, that'll go through how to grade this. So if you have any questions on this, certainly contact us. We're more than happy to go over it again with you. But I think you'll see that a lot of the questions have a wide range, and then we start talking about music, mathematical abilities, all these different areas, and that's what I think is so great about this fixed and growth mindset conversation. Is it's important to talk about it at work, but it's also about your life. The idea that
you got one brain,
exactly,
one brain, one life.
It's used for everything.
Yes.
And so it might now be where you had an idea, say, oh, I'm not good at music. Like I'm too far beyond. I can't learn that. Well, who's saying that? It's a very fixed mindset mentality. Whereas you can pick up an instrument. That idea that you can't teach old dogs new tricks, there's no real evidence for that. And I think now with this and going over the results of this, I think hopefully will spark people to maybe try something new, whether it's at work or in their personal careers, whatever it might be.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm going to let you get to it.
Okay,
I'm sure everybody is anxiously awaiting their responses here.
So the link will likely be posted soon, so definitely take a look at it. There's actually 20 questions on there that once you go to the link, and you'll see the first 10 are the ones that you answered before our conversation here today. Now, the scoring of it actually is, I think, a strong survey. They do, in fact, use those reverse scored items that we've been talking about from our last session. And so because of that, sometimes it is a little bit challenging to score, but I do want you to be aware of everything is out of a 3-point scale, so there's either 0 points you earn, 1 point you earn, 2 points you earn, 3 points that you earn. And then basically with those 10 questions, you're going to add up how many points you earned for each one of those questions that I'm going to go through here first. So for question number 1, this is a typical straightforward question in scoring. So if you put strongly agree, this is actually at 0 points. Agree is worth 1 point, disagree is worth 2 points, and then strongly disagree is worth 3 points. The scoring sheet, by the way, is on that link as well that you can go through, and it'll take you through the first 10 questions. Those are the ones that you answered once again. For question 2, these are flipped now. So you'll actually see here for the growth mindset, if you put strongly agree, that's actually worth 3 points. Agree was worth 2. Disagree is worth 1, and then strongly disagree was worth 0.
Okay.
And then we'll go through the remaining ones. So for question 3, if you put strongly agree, that's worth 3. Agree is worth 2. Disagree is worth 1, and then strongly disagree is worth 0. For question 4, now we flip it. So now we have for strongly agree, this is 0 points. Agree is 1 point. Disagree is 2 points. Strongly disagree is worth 3 points. For question 5, strongly agree, if you put, that's worth 3 points. Agree is worth 2. disagree is worth 1, strongly disagree is worth 0. We're halfway there. Question 6, strongly agree is worth 3, agree is worth 2, disagree is worth 1, strongly disagree is worth 0. Question 7, if you put strongly agree, that's worth 0, agree is worth 1, disagree is 2, strongly disagree is 3. And then for 8, same scoring actually as that one, strongly agree is 0, agree is 1, disagree is 2, strongly disagree is 3. And then for both 9 and 10, these are the same scoring systems. For strongly agree, it's worth 3 points, agree is worth 2, disagree is worth 1, and then strongly disagree is 0. So now for everyone here, that if you had your survey and the answers that you put, what you want to do now is just add up all the points that you had now earned from each of those different scoring methods. Once again, the link is posted if you want to go through that on your own. Now, once you get that sum, there now is going to be a wide variety of points that you then are going to have. And what this survey is here trying to illustrate is that depending on how high your score is a reflection of currently what kind of mindset do you tend to take. So if you score between 0 and 10 points, this survey then would put you in the strong fixed mindset mentality. If you scored higher than 23 points, so between 23 and 30, that puts you in a strong growth mindset. And then there's differing levels in between those two. So between 10 and 16 points, that puts you in the fixed mindset, but you're starting to have some growth mindset ideas. You're not completely fixed. You're starting to kind of crack the egg open. And then there's the growth mindset with some fixed ideas, which is between a score of 17 to 22. So this is now where an individual has kind of really bought into the idea of growth mindset. They're starting to look at things from a different perspective, saying, maybe how can I tackle this a different way? Saying, you know what, maybe I didn't do as well with this in the past, but just like a muscle, I can work it out and try it. But there's a little bit of hesitation. There's still a little bit of reservation someone might have about trying something new. So what I think is interesting, and again, for every single one of you, it's going to be a different outcome, but looking at the people who took this, many of them, and based on the mode responses, were in that growth mindset with some fixed ideas. So kind of buying into the idea of growth mindset. Now what would be really interesting is that I would say for the people that you work with, how do they score? You know, how do they score compared to you? Because while it's great to have that growth mindset, what if now you're the only one that you work with that kind of has that idea?
And that's so funny you said that, because that was like my immediate inclination is that, you know, I see a lot of people in this whole human resource space that are definitely looking to transition from this HR typical role to more organizational development. And they may have been brought in by leaders who promoted that and hired them under the guise of that thought process. And then once they got in, they found out that it wasn't the case. And again, what's so important to say, and I think for a person who's been in the employment space for 3 decades, what brain-based learning has taught me is that we always think that this is malicious. We always think it's mean or inappropriate. And all these negative things when an individual does something that differs from our mindset. And now what I better understand is that is their absolute belief. That is the shortcuts by which they access information that has been acquired over decades to represent this particular fixed mindset. The difference of what we're talking about is those individuals who use this established intellectual property but are open-minded to say, Eric, maybe you have a good idea. You know, very similar to our relationship in that you share information with me that's fascinating. I can share, you know, real life experience over, and it's that amazing collaboration. And I think what my inclination would be when you share those results, and I'd love to get your thoughts on that, is that if they're a growth mindset who is fixed mindset ideas, it would almost lead me to believe about, okay, how do I get past it? So I believe I can. Okay, I believe I can, but how do I do it?
And I think I think ultimately if we had a simple 15-minute answer even, then we would be able to fix so many problems that exist. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to do it. I mean, the idea of the fixed and growth mindset, stereotype threat, all the things that come with it is a very controversial topic and has a lot of research now behind it and a lot of ideas that are sometimes even counterintuitive and they combat one another. But I think ultimately it's having the conversation, whether that's with people in your company, with us, anyone, that basically says, well, here's where I'm at. Now hopefully the survey kind of gives you some indication of that. How do I get to that next level? You know, if I'm at fixed with some growth mindset, how do I get up to the next one now? Of a growth mindset with some reservations. If I'm in the completely fixed mindset, how can I start to now crack that egg? You know, how can I now start to take little bits, the bite-sized pieces of the day-to-day activities that they do, and try to think of it now with a more open-mindedness? And are there people in their lives that are actually completely growth mindset, and can we now start to emulate them? Can we start to borrow from some of their ideas? You mentioned the collaboration here. I think honestly, if you were to talk to people in the university sector, the public sector, the private sector, anything, that you now have someone who is both university, college trained, now working directly and helping to have a direct impact on the business community, I think would be great. And I think it really highlights exactly what education wants, this interdisciplinary approach. But I think it takes the opportunity to say, you know, maybe you are better at this, or maybe your idea is in some ways more effective, and having that ability to think of it in a different way, that growth mindset.
And I guess what I would say is that we need to start validating information that comes to us, regardless of where it comes to us. I think a fixed mindset is fake news, and I'm so sick of hearing that, but it's the best way for me to say it. So you tell yourself something, and what I'm challenging people to do is to validate that it's true. Because what I see is a person who comes to me and say, I can't work with this person. But it's only because you're approaching that person from a fixed mindset because you haven't really figured out their brain.
Right.
All right? And if you could do your own little case study and maybe try things on a different way, and all of a sudden you start to see responses, that's going to be a whole different set of circumstances. The fact of the difference between getting from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset is making that step to do something different, to try something different. And I think we tell ourselves so much fake news and we have no validation from it. And I know, at the Neuroleadership Institute, where I've studied and certified, if we even give an opinion, like, we're freaking cut off at the knees. They're like, we don't care. If you don't have a math or data, we don't care about what's going on in here. This have viruses, it has a lot of things that I want to see the research on it. And I think what I challenge people to do is to start their own research. If you believe you're not getting to the next level because of your boss, validate that.
Right.
Maybe a different type of conversation, right? And I think, when we look at the novelty, and I think of your Ellie, right? I really think of that beautiful baby who I'm like, got some envy on a multitude of different levels. But when I look at her inquisitive nature, right? You're going to just see her be so inquisitive. We've lost that. We've lost that as people. We're not inquisitive anymore. We don't ask questions. All we do is give responses.
Right.
And it doesn't get us to that higher level of circuitry.
Well, I think that's where the people who took this, again, if you scored into that kind of growth mindset category, I think those are the types of people who are more willing to then ask those questions. But I think the challenge now becomes, what if you're working in an institution or in a place where now by asking that question, you're looked down upon, or you're shunned, or people ridicule you and say, just, why are you asking this question? Just go with it. Just do what I tell you to do. And I think that's where now it becomes a situation, going back to what you said earlier, that remember, it's all about you. It's you, Inc., right? It's you incorporated in what you bring to the table and what you're willing to do. And even you are in a situation like that, in an environment where your growth mindset is not being appreciated. That's, I think, then a worthwhile conversation to have with the people here or with the people at the place that you work, people at home, whatever it might be, because I think then you can start to see people start to lose that growth mindset, and that if you're not working it out, kind of revert back to that fixed mind. And that could be a terrible tragedy. And maybe that's going back to your answer as to what we're now seeing, and that over time we didn't really value those questions, and kind of now we start to see the reemergence of the fixed mindset.
Well, and again, it's the carrot and the stick, right? It's that old management style where it's very much the carrot and the stick, which again keeps you more in threat.
Mm-hmm.
It's that assumption that people are only looking for money, and that's what motivates them. I just think that on an ongoing basis, the brain who rules the roost is so maligned. We know more about lungs and heart than we know about, the brain in relation to a multitude of different things. And I saw a great blog from Elon Musk, and he's talking about artificial intelligence and all this different information about artificial intelligence, and he has this not-for-profit that supports this. And my first inclination was, Jesus H, we don't even know about our own brain.
Right.
And look at the advances. As individuals, as people, we don't know enough about ourselves. And when we talk about self-awareness, again, it's a fixed mindset self-awareness, because don't forget, you listen in a fixed mindset. Not only do you communicate in one, but you listen in one. So if an individual is giving you information and your personal narrative is keeping that in check, in your filing cabinets, as I finally refer to it, then you believe that to be true. Versus what we're saying is validate it, growth mindset exercise. Ask questions. Determine maybe these individuals or this organization isn't the right fit for you.
Right.
Or maybe you're just not connecting to this mind. No two brains are alike.
Yep.
Right? So I think it's all those different inclinations that we have to kind of give consideration to, or exercises. Because if we're creating those new circuits, then we're going from this low wattage to this 220 line, right? And we're able to have higher level conversations. But, I was just at an event where a gentleman was lamenting the fact that he's been at $2.5 million for his business for 10 years. Because he has a $2.5 million fixed mindset.
Mm-hmm. And I think also, being willing to accept that someone else may have an idea or a solution that you didn't come up with, and that's perfectly fine, because if it was a world where we could survive on our own, then we would be there. But I think you actually see so much benefit from these different interdisciplinary approaches, different ideas, different backgrounds, and the willingness now to accept those, I think now provides so many pieces of data to really help you come to that solution much more effectively than if it's just your background, your anecdotal evidence.
Yeah, and what I would say is I know that we have representation from across the country that had basically taken the survey. But for the people that are in Buffalo, New York, we're going to be having like a brain on leadership type of conversation this coming Tuesday, a lunch and learn, if you will, kind of taking this information to the next level in terms of personal training. Let's talk about some brain exercises. Let's talk about some ideas that get you more from this fixed mindset to growth mindset. All you need to do is to connect with us. Austin, how could they sign up for that particular event?
That link will be coming through our social feed once again on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, anywhere you can find us. And it's also on our website at the upcoming events tab.
Okay, wonderful. So again, we'd love to see you on Tuesday, and we can kind of digest and dissect more of this information. We don't have a vast university segment where we could have an auditorium someday, right? So please make sure you sign up, because I know we're half full currently. So make sure that you touch base and get in so we can kind of continue this conversation. And Kate, how much time do we have left?
It's 2:30.
Okay.
By the way, Eric and I looked at the calendar, and the next one, we're looking at June 22nd.
June 22nd?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful.
You can't make it on Tuesday.
Okay, wonderful. So we're gonna, we do these monthly, so, certainly we'd love you to engage in whenever it works into your schedule. But kind of from this, any other pieces of advice, any other epiphanies, any other things that you can kind of share? Kate, I assume we don't have any pressing questions?
Nope.
Okay, wonderful.
I think it's, take a look at the link that's posted on here. I think for most of the people who took this in advance, you're going to see you're kind of in that growth mindset. But I'd be very curious to see how others, take this that you work with. And again, it's not a perfect survey. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time here to talk about, some of the limitations to this and some of the kind of bias, that we may have then instilled as a result of our previous conversations. But I think it's a good way to start the conversation. you know, kind of see where other people are at. And I think by knowing more about yourself and the people that you work with, the people that you're around every day, that may now provide you better evidence on how to go forward, how to make improvements in the future.
Yeah, and again, I think that what I would say is that, you know, when again you look at this fixed mindset and you look at how much more we know about this autopilot from a health standpoint. You know, questions about using or losing it, questions about Alzheimer's, you know, again, the general health of our brain. I think, you know, this is not smoke and mirrors. Everything that we're sharing is based in very strong research, Diane. I think that's what's so cool about the type of work that we're doing, because, you know, people have these opinions that we can either validate or in many instances we can't validate, because the truth tends to be far removed from what they think is their reality. So I think that's the one thing that we can comfortably say, is that people who understand themselves better actually become better people.
Right.
And that's a really profound thing to be able to say. Just like any health related, you know, the way in which you're taking care of your body, you have to ask yourself how you're taking care of your brain, because it is the mainframe.
And I think this is the first step, you know, kind of down that workout path.
So congratulations to all the bold people who took it. You're a little bit more self-aware. Again, happy to continue the conversation. Please go to our new website. We're going to be launching that. It's www.apasolutions.com. Have all of our new products and information, a bunch of case studies. If it's not represented on the website, we certainly have. You can get to both Eric and I through our social, through APA Solutions. So I think other than that, we're in good shape. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We've been, as always, enjoyed our time together.
Absolutely.
And we look forward to continuing brain-based talks. Mindset matters, Eric.
Sounds good.
Big time.